got into his books when I was 18, 19 years old.
Yeah, that's exactly what I did too.
And and you get into this stuff, but it turns out the guy was actually very, very manipulative and ran a little cult with a lot of little acolytes and stuff. The guy was, and he was a massive fraud.
Oh yeah, and like a drug addict, and like all of that notwithstanding, we've all kind of been through that phase. Maybe Steve, I guess, hasn't been.
No,
but. So
I've always been old.
I generally feel like I can get into this kind of mindset. Like I can at least understand it a little bit. But what is it? A terrible case of healing, like that.
I'm not sure what that
is. A little out of my realm of being able to understand what's going on there.
Yeah, she's so Netta was either very gifted in a psychic manner, or she was a bit unbalanced.
Or perhaps both.
Yeah, it could be, but. It's really kind of hard to say. It's kind of a head scratcher. But apparently, her friend Dion believed that she was psychically gifted.
Very gifted at it. Yeah.
She also told her landlady, Mrs. McRae, that she sometimes went into trances, and said that at one time she had gone into a trance that lasted for a week, which I'm sure Mrs. McRae found a little weird, but. She told Mrs. McRae that she shouldn't worry if she went into a trance, and she shouldn't call a doctor. She should just let it pass. But she apparently never went into any major trances while she was staying there with Mrs. McRae.
Huh.
On the morning of November 17th, which was a Sunday, Netta started packing her luggage frantically when Mrs. McRae found her. She told Mrs. McRae that she needed to return to London right away because several individuals, she said, were attacking her telepathically. Mrs. McRae was a little skeptical about this, obviously.
As you do, yeah.
As I am right now, yeah.
Mm-hmm.
But then she did notice something odd, which is that and again, you don't know if this was inserted into the legend after the fact or what.
Sure.
Supposedly, though, she noticed that Netta's shiny silver jewelry had basically tarnished to black, overnight. And now some people have metabolisms and skin excretions such that they do actually tarnish silver.
I have that.
Well, it does happen.
It doesn't happen overnight.
And I cannot think of, because I looked this up to try and find out what causes that, and it's something ketoacidosis, and I can't think of what it is, but it's acidic, it's acidic sweat, basically.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, but
simplifying the heck out of it.
And I can tell you, as somebody who has something, at least a minor case, I don't know.
How long does it take you to turn bright silver black?
I don't think I've ever turned it black. I mean, I always stopped wearing it.
Well,
but,
it might have been a bit exaggeration.
I'll wear a sterling silver necklace or a ring or something like that fairly constantly, and it takes, a month or two for it to really seriously tarnish.
I think that maybe what happened here is that when she first met Netta fresh off the boat, her silver was shiny, and then...
and she just remembered it as being shiny.
Didn't remember it, didn't notice it much after that. You're living in a kind of cold neighborhood, so Netta probably
it's always under your shirt.
Yeah.
It's a cold neighborhood, and it's seas.
Yeah, so it probably didn't turn black. Yeah, it didn't turn dark overnight.
No.
And it probably wasn't actually black. It was probably just darkened.
Yeah, it's very tarnished.
Yeah.
Although, I've got to admit that silver does, if you let it get exposed to elements, it will eventually get pitch black. I found a quarter recently. I mean, this is a weird little segue to it, but I was wandering on a beach and looked down and went, hey, that's not a rock, and picked up what turned out to be a quarter from 1941, so it's pure silver, and it was pitch black.
Yeah.
Cool.
Because it had been in the water for a while, and it had just continued to tarnish and tarnish and tarnish, and to the point that I had to rub on the front of the face with my finger for a minute to get the tarnish to go off enough to be able to read it, because it does happen.
Oh, yeah.
But it takes a while for things to turn that black.
But no, it does not overnight.
No.
So it would either be a lie or super paranormal, right?
Mm-hmm.
That everything turned black?
Mm-hmm. Overnight.
I don't know that it would be a lie. I wouldn't call it a lie. I would call that a lapse in observation.
Fair.
Yeah, and she didn't necessarily. She might have said, I noticed at that point that her silver crucifix around her neck had turned really dark. And she didn't say the word overnight, and then somebody else sort of interpreted it that way. But
as happens, things get inserted.
Yeah.
Shockingly.
Yeah. So she might have said something of the odd. She was probably being questioned by the local authorities, whoever they were, who said, "Did you notice anything odd about her appearance?" She would have said, "Well, I did notice that her silver cross had kind of turned dark."
And in a very religious community, that would be, if you're very strong to your faith and everything is based upon that, that would be the kind of observation you would think was important to bring forward.
Agreed.
Especially if she's doing these, and I'm not going to sound like I'm ripping on her, but these kooky things at night that I don't understand. In other words, her trances or up all night doing who knows what. This lady's like, wow, that lady's really weird.
She's kind of around the bend.
I think there might be some devils involved. I mean, I'm obviously inferring a lot of stuff, but with that statement. But this could be where her mind was, which would then prompt her to say, and her silver was extremely darkly tarnished.
Yeah. So anyway, that's let's. But back to the story for a sec. So Netta was packing hastily.
Sure.
As the story goes, and. At that point, Mrs. McRae mentioned to her that, by the way, it's Sunday. You do realize the ferry doesn't run today.
Oops.
And Netta was a little upset, but then apparently after a little bit of time spent by herself in a room, she came out and said that she'd changed her mind and she was going to stay on the island after all. Did I tell you that she was being psychically attacked? So maybe she successfully beat back the attack.
Yes, she put up a shield wall.
Yeah, I don't know. Yeah, so a little asbestos.
That doesn't happen super readily. What?
Yeah. Well, Professor X does it all the time.
Okay, Professor X is a mutant.
Well,
so
okay, all right, you're right. Bad analogy. I'm sorry to all our X-Men fans out there and friends. I apologize for equating Netta and Professor X on the same page.
Yep.
How many of those movies that they made, by the way?
It doesn't.
Seems like they've made like dozens.
We're just so off topic.
Let's go back to the story.
Yeah, back to the story. So she said she changed her mind, and then she left to go walking around, which she liked to do a lot, and she never came back.
Huh.
So,
and she left in the evening, right?
She left in the afternoon, and then supposedly in late afternoon, early evening, in some tellings of the story, Mrs. McRae got a little worried about her, and so they started the search then. In other tellings of the story, she wasn't really paying attention, but she went to check her room in the morning.
She
wasn't there. And that's when she got alarmed, and the search began. So either Sunday night or Monday morning, the search began, and they scoured the island, and not till Tuesday did they find her body. So she was at the south end of the island, not at the very south tip or anything like that, but towards the south end, wearing only a thin black cloak, which in late November made the local doctor, who got to play the role of CSI in this particular thing, he decided the cause of death was exposure.
Just as a question, was Mrs. McRae able to say, that she left the house wearing that, or...
Well, that's one of the things I'm a little worried. I'm a little kind of wondering about.
There's no mention of her clothes.
There's no mention of
well, that's one of the unsolved mysteries here for me is that I'm assuming she left the house fully clothed.
Sure.
And then at some point decided to take it all off. But they never found her clothes.
Right. Surely if Mrs. McRae was saying, her silver jewelry had tarnished, she would also be like, also she was naked except for a cloak.
Yeah. She walked out in her birthday suit.
Yeah.
And she wasn't wearing her shoes. I mean, certainly if she'd walked out wearing a cloak, then that might be passable because the cloak is closed. She can't see that she's naked.
But if it was a thin cloak.
Cloak, maybe. As long as her headlights aren't on. But she was also found barefoot. So she walked out wearing a cloak but barefoot. That would have raised a few eyebrows. So I'm assuming she went out fully clothed and decided to take it all off at some point later on. But her clothes and her shoes were not found.
There's also the possibility that she did leave in just the cloak, and that Mrs. McRae didn't actually see her leave, but let's say just heard the front door close.
Yeah.
She said, I'm going out. Bye.
Yeah, and shut the door, and okay, see you later, whatever. And I mean, that's a possibility, because the weird thing is being able to figure out. So I'm assuming, let's just say she left without any of them on but the cloak.
Yeah, or it's conceivable she buried them somewhere, or they just got blown away by the wind.
Or
it is November.
In the sea, or, Is there, was that, she was naked? Was there...
Naked except for the cloak.
Right.
She had some scratches on her body, and the soles of her feet were kind of chewed up, which would probably happen if you're walking over rough ground.
On the soles of your feet, but not on your torso.
She was walking around the moors. I'm not sure how heavy and sharp the brush is up there. She's walking around naked. She could have gotten scratches on her body from just brush. So,
by the way, I do want to point out that for anybody who's kind of questioning the cause of death because the local doctor, you said it was exposure.
Exposure, and he also said maybe a heart attack. But
yeah, he also was not very skilled at his job. In other words, he was the local practitioner. He wasn't a mortician. He wasn't a detail doctor. He was, you have a cold, take this. Because he put the cause of death somewhere between 10 o'clock on Sunday night to I think
9 a.m. on Tuesday morning.
Yeah, before she was found. Yeah. So, I mean, he's just covering all his bases. Might have been exposure. She might have died of a heart attack. She died in this window.
Yeah.
There you go. Thank you very much. I got to go now.
Essentially what we're saying is that he gave as much information as anyone in this room could have given him.
Exactly my point. I don't think that any kind of autopsy was done.
Well, no, I mean, I assume that this guy examined the body carefully, just looking for things like signs that she was clubbed or stabbed or anything like that.
And
found no signs of foul play.
Any of us in this room would do the same thing, right? Yeah. And so then we would say,
Yeah, I mean, this guy has probably seen more dead bodies than we have, so he probably had a somewhat better odds of correctly guessing the cause.
Yeah, sure.
No, I'm not discounting his abilities as a doctor and his observations to make these kind of guesses, but it is very basic.
Yeah, and he was obviously, if she was killed by a psychic attack, which we'll get into later, he had no means to detect that.
Of course not.
Yeah.
Not like you and me, Joe.
Oh, yeah, I know. Okay, now let's jump into theories, our favorite part of the show. You guys have any theories?
I do, but I'm going to wait for you.
Okay, well, I was going to throw a few out. One is that she was just out wandering around. She got lost. She got confused. Hypothermia was setting in, and as we all know, sometimes when you have hypothermia, your brain not quite working right. Just like when we were talking about the Dyatlov Pass incident.
That whole thing where you think you're hot, so you start stripping off your clothes.
The middle part of hypothermia,
Yeah. So maybe she was a little bit confused and started taking off her clothes. And then, of course, there's the question of that whole cross that's cut into the ground by the dagger.
Yeah, that's a little weird. By the way, I wanted to ask about that. How big is this cross that was carved in? I could never find anything that said, was it a 1 foot by 2 foot cross or an 8 foot by 6 foot cross? Like, I could never get into scale on this thing.
I've never gotten into scale on it either. I hear that it's a large cross, so I'm assuming it's just like something like 5 or 6 feet long.
Something that was big enough for her to lay on?
I had the impression that it was kind of like her body was like, that it was a symbolism like of a crucifixion or something.
Yeah.
Similar to that. It was about the size of her body.
I got that impression too, but I'd never seen anything that said.
I didn't either, but for whatever reason.
So we don't really know how big it is then.
Nope.
So
although we three independently inferred the same thing, so perhaps that may be the case.
Or perhaps we just all
are the wrong.
Go to the same place every time.
It's possible.
My other question, and this is why I ask about this, is there's this talk about the dagger and the cross in the ground, but you never hear anything about the dirt, that the soil or what would be cut up. If I cut this cross in the ground, at least from my perspective, I would presume that I would cut it out, and then I would roll on the sod or whatever topsoil, whatever plant life is away.
That's interesting because I thought it was like a 2 lines.
Oh, see, when I heard that, I thought she literally cut the growth off so it was bare
dirt.
Interesting.
Yeah, but you don't know how much. Was it an inch wide or 5 inches wide?
And anybody that's used a shovel that's tried to dig up any kind of plant life and a half an inch or an inch deep to try to expose bare dirt, that's not easy work, which might explain like this whole thing about cuts and scrapes.
Yeah, although let's be fair, in Scotland it's either grass or moss, right?
True. But where would that? I never heard anything about this. Let's just say my direction was correct. Well, then we never heard anything about a pile of soil or plant life that had been cast aside for her to lay in this exposed dirt.
Which is why I think I assumed that it was just like 2 lines, right? That like somebody had just done like the line drawing of a cross. Under it, just like literally just stabbing the earth
and just gouging it. So it's an audible, a noticeable cut in the ground, but it's not open.
Yeah,
that's possible. It's also
that
possible.
More sense.
It's also possible that she removed some turf to have a more well-defined cross and
it's
chucked
hard
it
to
aside,
tell.
and nobody really thought it was worth to put in a report or anything like that.
Well, and plus we don't know like weather conditions. Like it's Scotland in November. It was probably raining,
right?
Could have
been.
I mean, like there's a lot of different stuff that was probably potentially going on there that could have gotten rid of all that soil.
Yeah, true. So anyway, so the cross is like a little bit of a mystery, but it does appear that she cut it herself. And as far as the clothes go, that's still kind of strange.
Well, again, if it's windy, the clothes might have been blown away.
And again, one of these things could be one of those little details. Maybe there was a little pile of her clothes right there, and it just got lost over time. Because remember, this happened 85 years ago. So that's
and it's an unsolved mystery, right? I mean, that's the other. We often talk about this on the show that like these unsolved mysteries, quote unquote, like the telling of them gets more and more fantastical as time goes on,
and the mundane details
get just like knocked out.
Left out.
Who wants to know the mundane details?
Who cares about that? We got to get some blue lights in this mystery.
Absolutely. Yeah. And missing clothes, and like she was naked, and there were mysterious scratches on her body, and there was a dude standing right there. Yeah, of course.
Oh, he wasn't standing right there. He was lurking nearby.
Oh, I'm sorry. He was lurking nearby.
Yeah, he was lurking.
So this theory is that for some reason she was out there doing something.
She got lost, perhaps.
And hypothermia set in.
So just like walking around or whatever. And
she got lost. Decided to shed some layers and maybe do a little astral projection or something like that. Or maybe she was doing some spell that would warm her body, or maybe was going to do a spell that would tell her the way home because she was lost,
or send her to London.
Maybe. Although it seems like it would be kind of impossible to get lost on an island. It's only 1 mile wide and 4 miles long.
Well, again, I go back to this whole like lack of understanding of the weather.
Yeah.
If it were gray and like super dark and windy, and if she was hypothermic and disoriented, and she kind of like awoken to her senses, realized, oh crap, like I'm lost and it's cold and I don't know, I'm naked for some reason.
I know.
And it's also a known fact that people are almost incapable of walking in a straight line. So
There's
you say
Mythbusters on that.
I want to walk there. I'm going. I know if I walk north, I will get to some place. But instead, you walk in a circle.
Yeah, that happens.
So whether it be a half mile or a 300-yard circle, you continue to walk in a circle.
Although, to be fair, if you know the island is as small as it is, you just think, I mean, at a fair brisk pace, I walk about a 20-minute mile. And most people kind of brisk pace, especially in those times. So if you just say, okay, well, the circumference of this is like basically 4 miles, right? So if I just like hug the coast, I will eventually get back to the village.
You'll get back
but
to the
if
village.
You're freezing cold, you don't want to take the 4 mile hike. You're going to try and take the half mile shortcut.
Yeah,
probably.
That's true.
I think we've covered that one.
We've covered hypothermia pretty well.
Okay.
Another possibility is suicide.
Yeah.
Maybe she just deliberately went out there and thought, I'm going to... Hypothermia as ways to go it's not so bad compared to, like, say, being eaten by sharks or being burned alive or something like that. So maybe she wanted to commit suicide, and maybe she figured, hey, I'll be buried on Iona, the most sacred of islands, with all these Scottish kings. And she was buried.
I mean, I guess even she had a dagger with her, right?
Yeah.
So, I mean, it's even possible that she initially went out there thinking, I'll
just follow my dagger. Yeah.
I'll just follow my dagger, and then, cowarded out at the last second.
Well, that might explain the scratches on her torso, too. I mean, she was trying to stab or cut herself. And then,
the tentative, what do they call it? Is it the hesitation marks?
Yeah.
Where she's trying. She's like, well, I'll just do a little one.
No, that
really hurts. Oh.
Yeah, when you hear these stories about...
that still really hurts.
When you hear these stories about Japanese people committing harikiri, stabbing yourself to death with a sword, it's like, how do you do that? I mean, you have to be really determined.
That's why they fall on it.
It's culturally ingrained. I couldn't
do that.
But it's also why the culture says you fall on your sword.
Yeah.
Because once you're starting to pitch forward, you can't twist aside fast enough.
Yeah, that's the way to do it. I guess. Because if you had actually push the sword into yourself, no.
You can't.
Okay, so suicide is a possibility. Another possibility is psychic attack. She was done in by a psychic attack.
By who?
Yeah. Well, the sinister Moina Mathers.
Oh.
Yeah, the sinister. Yeah, her friend Dion Fortune.
Oh, that's right, because she was friends with Dion.
She was friends with Dion, and she accused Moina Mathers of murdering Netta.
Well, I suppose that again, we don't know why Netta decided, I'm going to go to this far-reaching island that has some psychic powers, but
it might be to get away.
It may be to flee.
It might have been, yeah. It could have been.
We don't know.
Yeah, the problem with the Moina Mathers theory is that she died the year before.
Oh,
thank you, because I didn't want to be like the jerk that poo-poos this whole theory, but this one is the hardest one for me to even try
because you never
theoretically get behind.
You never went through your Carlos Castaneda.
I didn't.
Yeah, it might be she could reach beyond the grave, maybe.
You never know.
But then, if that's the case, actually, Moina Mathers actually had more reason to psychically attack Dion Fortune.
Oh, way more.
Yeah. Than to attack Netta.
Although I don't know how close they were. If it would have been worse for Dion to live with the hauntingness of her friend's mysterious death.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know.
Maybe. I don't know why Moina waited till after she died to do it, though.
Listen, more psychic powers.
Oh, you get more psychic powers after you die? Oh, okay. All right. We'll have to give that one maybe a possibility. Next theory. She was mentally disturbed, and she just thought wandering around naked in late November would be a fun idea.
I gotta be honest, I have a couple friends that I worry about this with.
Yeah?
That are still in there somehow they're almost 30s. Somehow in there Carlos Castaneda, weird psychic attack phase. Yeah. Where they, every once in a while I'll get a text from them that's I'm being attacked psychically by blah, blah, blah. And I'm like, wow, really? You actually, you truly believe that? It's not an attention thing. And I worry sometimes that, wow, maybe that's, you just are.
So this is very... But this theory is kind of related to the first one, then.
Yeah.
This is an offshoot of the first theory. Am I wrong?
It's a better description of the first one, right?
Yeah. Yeah, well, the first theory is that she was not mentally deranged so much, but the hypothermia caused that. This is
okay, I see the distinction.
The cause in this case is mental illness bringing about unclothing herself and getting hypothermia. So
for me, this kind of helps inform theory one, right? It gives a good reason behind why somebody might be out there.
But there are indications in the story that this could be right. Her whole I've got to get off this island. I got to pack everything now. I got to go.
Yeah, she's either disturbed,
you know what? I'm okay. Don't worry about it now.
No, I'm fine.
Yeah.
Are you sure you're fine? You were just freaking out. No, I'm fine.
It's totally okay. Don't worry about it. I'm going to go for a walk.
Yeah, she didn't say whether Netta had put some tinfoil over her head.
Right.
That might have warded off the psychic attacks.
Yeah.
So mental disturbance caused her to get naked and die of hypothermia. Okay, the next theory, maybe she wanted to do some ritual, and the ritual required her to be naked or nearly naked in order to do the ritual. And she, at this time, was just a little bit too mentally disturbed to understand what a bad idea this was, doing it this
where she was.
Exactly. So maybe she decided that she was going to do a little astral projection. Although I know nothing about astral projection. I don't think you need to be naked to do it. But she decided to cut the cross, lay down, do some astral projection, and her consciousness went out and wandered the universe for a while. And then when it came back and it got home, well, she had expired from hypothermia. So maybe she was doing astral projection.
I mean, it's possible, right?
Yeah.
I mean, there are so many things to build on this, right? Is that if she already kind of thought that was a thing, she could have been drunk or on drugs enough to really believe that and think, wow, I have to be naked to do this. I'm just going to lay down for a minute while I do this, because you don't have to be laying down to do astral projection, but maybe you're inebriated and laying down feels better, right?
Yeah,
I don't know. And also, wasn't the founder of Alpha et Omega, he had some sexual scandal happen, and that's why he founded Alpha and Omega?
Yeah. So the Hermetic Order of the New Dawn or whatever it was.
So it's totally possible. I know that it was definitely a thing in a lot of those kind of alternate psychic crazy orders in the 20s that there was a lot of sexual stuff that went with that. So I guess it is certainly possible that she there was a ritual that she was trying to perform or whatever that involved that sexual component.
You know, I mean, think about it. If you're a cult leader and you're going to like try to attract attractive female followers into your whole thing, and you're gonna teach them all these rituals, they say, oh, by the way, this requires you to be completely naked.
That is one of the most pervasive, like, just strands in all of the cults that I've ever read about. Is that, you know, it's like almost always founded by like some 30 or above guy who's always like, oh yeah, by the way, I get all these 15-year-old wives.
Yeah. And
we're going to have a lot of sex. It's just part of the religion. It's cool. It's fine. Whatever. It's God.
It's very
God told
it's
me.
Disturbing.
It's super disturbing.
Well, it's disturbing because they're playing off of people who are very naive.
Yeah, or mentally whatever,
like
or whatever.
The Branch Davidians down in Waco, you know, the Jim Koresh was their cult leader. And that was one of the things. Yeah, you all come and live in the compound, and I get to have sex with your wives. And I'm like, what kind of guy would do that? I mean,
that was
bizarre.
the thing. We just talked about the cult last week with the Monster with 21 Faces, the cult in Japan.
Yeah.
I can't remember the name
of it. I think it was.
Yeah, and I know that it was like mostly women that followed him, and he was having sex with all of them.
Oh, that's why I want to be a cult leader. Right? Seriously.
I mean, that's a big part of a lot of cults, and I don't know if Alpha et Omega was that kind of cult or not, but I have no idea. I'm not willing to 100% discount the fact that like that could potentially be, quote, you know, air quote, part of that ritual.
Yeah. I don't know that they were. There's not enough. I couldn't find enough available information about these guys.
Shocking.
Really, yeah, I know. It appears that they took the metaphysical aspects of things more seriously than a lot of these really weird little cults like the Branch Davidians.
Sure.
Or Jim Jones, those guys, yeah. But I can't say what they were up to.
Nobody knows, right? Because that's part of it.
But certainly, you know, if you're going to do a ritual that doesn't hurt to be naked, and so if you're the cult leader. You're gonna say like, hey, by the way, you're required to be naked to do this ritual. So,
33-year-old young woman who's super attractive.
Yeah,
weird.
Again,
it's required that you be naked.
There are some very base reasons why that happens, and it is very disturbing. And I think I'm just going to leave it at that. I'm actually going to move us away from this because I'm a little uncomfortable continuing to repeat this conversation.
Let's talk about some of your theories.
I actually have two theories that I think both play off of the last theory that you talked about.
Any UFOs involved?
No, not at all. Damn it. No UFOs.
Yeah. All right. So what about the Scottish Yeti?
No Scottish Yeti.
Yeah.
But I have two theories here, and this is just based off of things that I read and I inferred, and then a little bit of random research that I did. My first thought is that I think you touched upon this a little bit. Is, well, what if she was Devin? You said this. What if she's a little high? Okay.
Yeah.
Well, at the time that she came to the island, and I was reading the accounts about Nana, they were saying that she really looked terrible. Kind of sunken eyes, kind of a bad pallor about her. And we've talked about the fact that, you know, maybe she's got the condition where she's oxidizing the silver a lot. So she could have had what was equated to some kind of internal organ disorder. Well, at that time, there was a lot of folklore about using heather plants to make teas and poultices from to heal you. It's never been supported anywhere. In other words, I've looked at it, and they're like, yeah, it could maybe do something, but we can't scientifically prove that it does a damn thing for you. But here's the thing. For years and years and years on these islands, people used to make beer out of heather. And they used to only use the fresh, new growth tips of the plant because they didn't have hops. That's what they used to make the fermentation from. But it was common knowledge that you didn't go into the older growth because guess what was commonplace in the older growth of those plants?
What?
Ergot.
What's that?
ergot.
Okay, yeah, the
bread mold.
Yeah,
the mold that we've talked about.
Yeah.
So I could see where she is using this stuff to try to make herself feel better, and she gets some of it. I feel okay. And then she gets a bad batch, and she goes on a bender, not knowing what's going on, and now she's off, in a altered state. And that would explain she's high as a kite,
having a break from reality.
So she was out basically just chewing on plants out there, right?
Well, if she made a poultice out of it, which poultice requires heating it up, that would kill it. So I've got to guess she was making a tea of some kind.
Talking about a poultice that you put on your body, right?
Right, because you got to kind of make it into a paste.
Yeah.
So you got to heat it up and break it down. But if you're making it as a tea and you're just dipping it in water, some of it's going to survive. So now you're in an altered state. You have a break from reality, and off you go. And so let's say that first thing in the morning she makes some of that tea, and she's having a bit of a trip, and that's why she wants to get off the island. And then she has some more, and she quote unquote evens out, and then has more of that bad batch, and now she's gone on a really bad trip.
Yeah.
And suddenly she is out there, man.
That's possible. Although you would think that Mrs. McRae would have noticed her making tea from this stuff and warned her about the possibilities of.
You would think, but
maybe she wasn't in the kitchen when she was making tea.
Maybe she wasn't in the kitchen, and so she wasn't paying attention.
Yeah.
So I mean, that could explain why she would have gone out there and died from exposure, because she passes out.
Yeah.
Just completely passes out.
Yeah.
It's also possible that the other thing that I think could have happened is, as agitated as I got the impression that she was that day, and her bad pallor and her physical condition. I mean, they talked about the fact that she couldn't walk more than a couple hundred yards at a time before she had to stop and come back to the house. She couldn't go far afield, which leads me to wonder if she had some kind of condition. I wouldn't say like congestive heart failure, but she might have been in a situation where she was getting the beginnings of a stroke. So she's got, what is it when you've got the vein that bursts in your brain? I can't think
embolism.
An embolism. She's got an embolism that's building, so she's losing her energy, and then she has a small stroke. She wigs out. That's why she wants to leave, because she's gone into an altered state again, and then kind of calms down, goes out into the landscape, and then has the major stroke.
I mean, if we're if we're going to go that route, things like acute kidney failure or like appendicitis, those things will all render those kind of like
same
panic.
symptoms.
And if you're in that kind of culture of thinking a psychic attack could be causing those things, right? Where you're like nauseous and you've got a headache and you're tired, and then you're able to just kind of calm yourself down because you can, people can talk themselves down from things like that. You say, okay, I'm fine. I'm just going to go for a walk. That will make me feel better. You for whatever reason, have this break. Take your clothes off because you've got a fever, maybe, or whatever.
Yeah.
I mean, if we're going to go that route, it could be so many different.
Yeah, suddenly she thinks she's 5 years old again, and it's fun to run in the sea.
But you would assume that even like a doctor, just like a family doctor, should be able to say there was some kind of failure or it was a stroke.
But that's is basing it upon that he was able to examine her when she was alive, which she may never have gone to this guy. I mean, Joe, how long was she on the island?
There's not a definitive arrival date.
Ballpark.
So she supposedly arrived there somewhere in July or August. So let's say she arrived there the first day of August.
So a couple months.
It takes me months to work up to go into a doctor.
She was there for almost 4 months.
To
she had no particular reason that I know of to go see the doctor to begin with.
Yeah. So he may not have had a living symptom to base it upon for whatever malady that it might have been.
Yeah, and he wasn't set up to do the whole, like the autopsy and cut her open and look at her innards and her brain and do toxicology and see if maybe she had some sort of poisoning like you're talking about going on. He wasn't set up for that. Okay, so much for that theory, or those theories. Good.
Yep.
So, Devin.
Wow, he really just kind of disconnected that one on you, didn't he?
Cut that thing off, man. So much for those.
I don't remember what I was going to say. So let's go to Devin.
I guess I don't really have